Carl Mumpower. He's running for U.S. House of Representatives, and we're delighted to have him here to get our campus and community involved and to spend a little time with us. So, without further ado.
That was beautiful. I just spent some nifty time, and it was by far the niftiest time I've had all day with a group of students over in the cafeteria. The food was good. I know most students don't think so, but I thought it was pretty tasty, and the company was better. Thank you for that. Thank you for Tabitha and all of you who were there. I see we have some Baptists in the group because they're at the back of the room back there. I'm grateful for every one of you being in the house, and this is kind of intimidating, really. You feel like you ought to be important if you're standing in front of this big open area here. I haven't done this in a while, but thank you for giving me some of your time. I want to put it to good use. I want to put it to good use by being honest and candid and open with you. I'm going to speak a few minutes about some things. Anybody listen to that while we're waiting? Anybody listen to that song? How do you like that song? Let me tell you how that song came about. I was coming out, most of the food I eat is organic. It's unusual for a conservative Republican, but I buy most of my groceries at a place called Green Life, and I was coming out of there one day, and there was this guy playing some music. And I stopped and listened to him a moment, he was a local fella, country guy, and he was playing some nice songs, and he said, "I want to play one for you." And he played that song, and it turned out he was a conservative and a Republican. And I said, "You know, I love your song. It's about Western North Carolina, which is my home. Wonder if we might put that to use in our campaign." He said he'd love it. So we put together a video and used his song, and I go to bed, that thing's playing in my mind. That song it's kidnapped my brain. So here's what we're going to do tonight. I don't want to, again, is that still working? Is it working okay? Good. We don't want to keep everybody forever. You all have things to do. We want to rock and roll real fast, see what we can learn from one another. I'm going to talk a few minutes, then I'm going to come out here and sit on this stool and answer questions about anything and everything, personal, professional, political. So if you put on that thinking cap and write down a thought or two and try to challenge me, make me think. Let's see if I can think on my feet. Let's see if I'm sincere, if I'm real. I hope you'll kind of give me an opportunity to demonstrate through your tough questions whether I am or not. A little bit about me. I want to talk about who, what, why, and how. A little bit about me. I'm a city councilman in Asheville, have been for about 7 years. I am the only conservative voice on what is arguably one of the most, if not the most liberal city council in North Carolina. I don't say that with malice or viciousness. I say it objectively. I don't dislike the people I serve with. I just disagree on a lot of things with the people that I serve with. I'm a father, grandfather. I'm a psychologist by profession. Have a doctorate from accredited school in Ohio. Have 2 master's degrees, one in counseling, one in clinical social work from other accredited schools. I got my undergraduate degree down in Florida, a little school called St. Leo, that used to beat you all viciously at football. Anybody heard about that? Do they still play you in anything, St. Leo? Lacrosse. So I wish I'd have known that. I'd have messed with the lacrosse team up there in the cafeteria just now. St. Leo is a lot like this school. It's a great size. It's not too big, not too small. It's a good place. Has a good feel. It reminds me of this campus. I'm a Christian. I'm a real Christian. I'm not a perfect Christian. Like anybody who's a Christian, it's a struggle. always easier to live in the world than through God's will, but I try hard to do it. I'm not a political Christian. I didn't pull that out of a hat so I could get elected. I try hard to live it. Actually, my grandfather's a Baptist minister. What do Baptist ministers have? Baptist ministers' sons. And what are Baptist ministers' sons like? They're a little bit wild sometimes. Well, that was my father. And I rattled around between my grandfather and my father all when I was growing up. So I've had all kinds of influences. I'm a real conservative. And what I mean by that, I have a voting record to match. I don't just talk it, I walk it. That's very important to me. I don't appreciate, or one of the things I least appreciate in politicians, and it's rampant, is insincerity. Where you say one thing and you do another thing. Or you say things to suit one crowd and say something else to suit another crowd. I just don't do that. I'm equally willing to make anybody mad. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. Why am I running? I am concerned that there are a lot of people in America today who do not have a voice. I would start with the unborn. I have a strong pro-life belief, and there are many reasons for that. As a psychologist, I've dealt with just too many people, too many women and men, who are suffering the emotional consequences of ending a life earlier in life. I have had that experience myself. It haunts me to this day. I would have a child that would be 35 years old had I not made an error in judgment with another person many years ago. I am pro-life in my position because I believe life begins at conception, and when you're just being conceived, you don't have a voice. There are plenty of other people that don't have a voice. You all are an example. By you all, I mean those of you who are students here. Most of your peers are not, this room is not filled with people. By the way, I am tickled to death to have this bigger group here. I'm delighted. Somebody was saying earlier, we don't know if anybody will show up. I don't care. There's 2 people there. That counts. That matters. And I'm grateful for each and every one of you. But most of your peers, if you're students, are not into politics. They're not thinking about that. That's either it's either not fun or distracting, or it doesn't make a lot of sense, or it doesn't seem that important. But I'll tell you, the young people of America today should be furious with me and my generation because we have betrayed you. We are betraying you. We're in the process of doing that. How are we doing it? $10 trillion in national debt, $70+ trillion in promises of entitlement programs, and an economy that is in danger of decline. Now, people say, well, gosh, after World War II, we had more debt per capita than we have now, and that's true. But there was a major difference. America manufactured 50+% of the goods of the world following World War II. We were an ascending economy. Now, when you drive down the interstate, how many plants do you see that are closed? How many of you have family members that once worked for a plant that is now closed? America's economy is shifting. We're going to have to work really hard to make sure that we don't betray you all with missing opportunities that we had and debt, a burden of debt that's not fair. It's like teaching a child to swim and putting a rock on their back before you throw them in the pool. It's not fair, and I believe my generation is guilty of doing that to you all. If you have no party of principles, then people pick the party of least principles. If we throw you in prison, who are you going to want to be your buddy? Barney Fife or the biggest, baddest guy in the prison? Who's going to help you feel safer? It's not Barney Fife. Well, in America today, I'm sorry to say, we have no political party of principle in practice. Now, my party has a tremendous set of principles, I believe. If you showed my party's principles to most people, I think at least 80% of them would say, gosh, this is good stuff. This makes sense. It's all common sense. I like this. My party's principles center on basically three things: protecting the country, keeping government intrusions out of our life, and being careful with other people's money and other people's values. And that's the core of the Republican Party principles. But the problem is we don't practice them, or we have not practiced them. I get in a lot of trouble with my party because I am not afraid, I do not believe in the 11th commandment. Anybody know what that is? Ronald Reagan coined it. Would you share that with us, sir?
Say no evil about Republicans.
Say no evil about Republicans. Speak no evil of your party. I think that's a bunch of nonsense. I don't think Ronald Reagan would practice it today. I believe that the 11th commandment actually betrays the 10 commandments that are real. Because who, as a Republican, should I try hardest to make bestest? That's a good word, isn't it? Bestest. They teach you that here at Mars Hill. I should try harder. What's the old adage? Mow your own lawn before you mow somebody else's. My responsibility is to uplift and protect my party. And to do that, you have to challenge it. And I believe that's important, because I think unless we have a party of principle, people will choose the party of least principle. And I mean this with no harshness or malice attached. But the basic principle of the Democrat Party of today, I was once a Democrat, is promise people whatever you need to get their vote and support. And I'm sorry, but promises are not a foundation for the future of America. Nor, on the other hand, is my party's guilt in pursuing power a foundation for a future of America. I think the future of America is going to be founded in having principles and standing for something and sticking by them. So that's the second reason that I'm running. That's the second why. A third one is we're in danger of becoming a country of special interests. I've had a real contrasting experience recently. We're in danger of becoming a country of me, not we. Now, what do I mean by that? I can't tell you how often people come up to me and the first thing out of their mouth is, I was at, by the way, AV Tech yesterday for I'm not sure what they call it, Student Day, Student Government Day, and almost half of the students that came up to me said, what will you do for me on this? And it was all about a special interest they had, not the larger interest in the common good. Now, I had a very interesting experience with that, and I'll talk in a moment about why that's so important. But I had a very interesting experience with that. Now, I'm a veteran. I graduated in high school in 1970, went to Vietnam, volunteered for service, volunteered for Vietnam, was there in 71 and 72, so I'm a veteran. I've been in harm's way before. But I had a group of veterans last week send me a list of things that they supported. Happened to be a military officers group from Western North Carolina. 4 things that they supported. All 4 had to do with more money from the Treasury. All 4 had to do with borrowing more money so that you all get to pay it back. All 4 were entitlements. Now, I couldn't really argue with any of them. They all sounded like nice things. But I wrote them a letter back and said, I'm sorry, I can only support one of the 3, and that had to do with the dependents, as I recall, of veterans more than veterans themselves. They are furious with me. I got a call from an admiral who said, I'm going to start a campaign in support of your opponent, who is not a veteran. I'm going to start a letter-writing campaign against you. I'm going to do everything I can to keep you from getting elected. I encouraged him to do whatever he thought was best. He said, you have lost the vote of 250 people in Western North Carolina. And I said something that really fried his bacon. I said, if your group is only about your group and your interests, I would rather you not vote for me. He didn't like that, of course, because what he wanted was to intimidate and bully me into supporting his special interest. Now let me give you a contrast with that. I went to Cherokee, and most of you wouldn't know this, but I made the Cherokee Indians mad at me about a year ago when I dared suggest that you guys are running a bit of a special interest over there, and this thing about getting a special deal on gambling and not having to pay state property or state income taxes and some other things, and then getting to use our money to lobby, and that just doesn't feel right to me. That's rigging the deal. Do you think that made the Cherokee mad? Absolutely. But there was one lady over there in the snowbird community who has some courage and some character and likes to understand people and reaches for the right thing, and she called me up and said, I would like you to come. I don't know what you'll come to. Well, I got there and there were 45 and 50 people there. When I got out of my truck and went to put a sign by the side of the road to let folks know I was there, a lady pulled up and said, "What in the world are you doing here?" I mean this, I'm almost quoting her. I said, "Well, I've been invited." "Well, you have no business here. We don't want you here. Leave." I asked her who she was, and she said, "I'm the head of this community. I'm the head of the community association." And I said, "Well, the assistant head invited me to come. I hope you will join us." I did, and I want to tell you what happened. I had a very special experience, probably one of the most special I've ever had. I'm in a room with, say, 50 members of the Cherokee Indian tribe who have been accustomed to federal entitlements and various government programs. And one person asked me, "What will you do for us?" And I said to this person, "I can promise you nothing more than fairness. That I will work hard to see that you get no more, but no less than what others get. Because I am about the America of we, not me." Guess what they did? Anybody venture a guess? They clapped. And they clapped loudly and enthusiastically. It was the best applause I got of the evening. It moved me. I got a little misty-eyed because they got it. They understood that as long as we're pursuing a country of me, we are in trouble. And that's what's happening today. That's why Congress is so ineffective. That's why today their latest poll ranking was they had a 9% approval rating by the American public. It's because they're running a rigged lottery up there, where the deal is to get elected, you see how much pork you can pull out of Washington. I call it our community welfare program, to throw back down here. They reach in our pockets, take the money, skim it, and then send it back selectively. I think that's wrong. I don't intend to participate in that system when I get to Washington. So that's the third why in terms of why I'm running. What I want to do, and I'm going to quickly get to the point of questions. Number one on my list is fight waste and corruption. I don't like bad guys. I don't like people who steal things. I don't care how they steal things. I don't care if they rob houses or rob taxpayers. I don't like waste. In terms of Iraq, I have an opinion on that. If somebody asks me, I'll tell you. But I can tell you one of the things that I want to fight over in Iraq is waste, because there's a tremendous amount of it. That waste is something that affects everybody. Republicans, Democrats, liberals, it doesn't matter who you are, conservatives, it affects everyone. The second thing I want to do is be a voice, I mentioned it earlier, for those people who don't have a voice. Whether it's the unborn, whether it's young people who are not engaged, so it's easy for us to throw things off on you. It's easy for us to mortgage your future, to do what's called fly now, pay later. That's what American government is doing today. That's wrong. There are a lot of other people that don't have voices. I'm really interested, believe it or not, in the poor. And that surprises people. I spend more time in public housing, more time doing things for the poor in Nashville than any councilman we have. Maybe any councilman we've ever had, and that's not bragging, I say it objectively. Why? Well, curiously, I have a background in social work. I went to one of the most liberal social work schools in the country, the University of Georgia. It was so liberal, they almost kicked me out because I was too conservative. But I wanted to learn some of those ways to help people. Well, one of the biggest things I learned is government does it poorly. Government tends to help people sit down instead of helping them stand up. And there are certainly exceptions. The GI Bill is one that I can point to, and there are others. But by and large, I'm afraid that government doesn't give people their dignity. Go into public housing and look around and see if you see people with dignity in their eyes and in their heart. Go into the food stamp office and see if that experience is uplifting people. It doesn't. There's something about the way the government does it that robs people of their dignity, and I don't think that's okay. So I care about the poor, but I want to make sure we give them an honest deal instead of playing games with them with hollow promises. Third thing I want to do, and believe it or not, the biggest job a congressman does is not in Washington. It's at home. It's looking out for people. It's just solving problems. I'm not even in Congress, and there's not a day goes by that I don't get a call from somebody saying, can you help me with this Social Security maze? At the Greenville District Office, they have a backlog of 9,000 people applying for Social Security disability. Now let's assume for the moment that 1/3 of those are trying to con the system. That still means there are 2/3 of those people who can't access it because it's a cumbersome, clumsy, inefficient bureaucracy. Well, that's one of the things a congressman does, is help people get through that. That's important to me. That's something I'm going to treat very seriously. And two more things that I want to do in terms of looking out for folks. I want to be an independent Republican. People ask me, they think it's a takeoff on words. You're just trying to be cute when you say you want to be an independent Republican. I'm not. I mean it sincerely. Independent from what? The Republican Party hierarchy. Why? Because I don't like them? No. Because I don't need them? No. But because I believe they have not kept faith with our party's principles. And that concerns me, like I think it concerns a lot of people. The last statistic I showed, in new registrations in North Carolina, 47% of the new ones were Democrat, 43% were independents, and 10% were Republicans. There's something wrong with that. The world, as the world gets more dangerous, we don't become more liberal, we become more conservative. People are not becoming more liberal. In general, they're becoming more conservative, but they don't have a party they can hold on to. That's one of the reasons that Sarah Palin has just shocked everybody to death and uplifted people, because people believe, God, she walks her talk. She stands for something. She's been willing, she's a maverick just like I am. She fights her party sometimes, but she upholds those principles. People are excited about her because she represents conservative values. Is she a perfect person? No, God didn't create any of those. And then finally, I am sincere about that word principle. It is not a hollow word that I throw out to people. When I speak to principle, I don't mean that I'm better than anybody. I just mean that I have some filters that I go by, and one of them is my party's core principles. I mentioned those earlier. So that's what I want to accomplish. And I'll finish by telling you a little bit about the how I'm going to do that. Now, I've done some things unusual, some things that have also made some people mad at me, and I started by saying a year ago, I am not going to accept PAC, union, party, or special interest money for this campaign. Nobody. My opponent has raised $3.4, last time I looked, million in special interest money, most of which has come from out of the district. Now, why don't I want to do that? Everybody that knows somebody that gives away money for free, please raise your hand. Do any of you give away money for free as a general rule? No. Businesses, PACs, unions, special interests, and parties do not give away money for free. They have an expectation attached to that. I do not want to go to Washington obligated to anybody, so I won't take PAC money. I will win or lose this election by earning it. I will not buy it. A lot of people disagree with that, and I may not be able to win on that basis, but I'm going to stand firm with that. I want to change the formula for way congressmen and women are elected. The second thing, and this would upset my wife a little bit, I'm not going to participate in the health care plan in Washington until we fix health care in the country. I'm not going to participate in any pay raises at all until we've got the economy squared away. I'm not going to participate in that overly generous retirement plan they have until we get Social Security solvent. And speaking of that, I want to thank you younger folks in advance for taking care of me in my old age. May I say thank you to you? Because by the time I retire, it's going to take two of you to take care of me. When Social Security first started, how many did it take to support somebody on Social Security? Anybody know? I think it was 43, somewhere in that range. As a matter of fact, most people don't know this. Roosevelt started Social Security. Your benefits kicked in at 65 or 66. Guess what the average age was at that time? 62. That meant most people died before they got the benefits. Well, we've got it all switched around now. It's not a safety net, it's a retirement plan, and we haven't taken care of it, and I'm afraid we've put a lot of debt burden on our younger folks, and I think that's wrong. And I'm not going to participate in that game up in Washington. I'm going to put principles before party, popularity, or any other P-word you can think of. Principles are going to come first. And that just simply means you may not like where I stand, but you'll know where I stand, and you'll know that if I do it today, I'm going to do it tomorrow. And I've had lots of practice. I've said a silent prayer I don't know how many times over the past 7 years saying, God, why am I here doing this in Asheville? Why am I sitting behind this table in this miserable circumstance week after week after week fighting this conservative fight? What's this about? And I think I was there to learn. Not many people know this, but I tried to join the Army about, I think it's been 3 or 4 years ago. Vietnam left me with an unfinished sense of business, and I tried to go back. I was succeeding. I was going to go back as a captain and a psychologist. I was enlisted when I was in Vietnam. I made a lot of the hurdles, credential hurdles and other things, but I wanted to try to help some of those young men and young women. I knew I could because I knew what it was like. But then it came down to one last hurdle. I had to get an age waiver. I'm 55. I think I was 52 something. I had to get an age waiver because I'd missed it by a year. And it went to the Pentagon. There happened to be about a dozen of us that went to the Pentagon. They turned every one of us down. Broke my heart. And there were some other things I could have tried, and I said a little prayer, and I said, God, maybe I guess you're telling me something. Maybe that's not my Iraq. Maybe my Iraq is here. Maybe my fight is here. And that's exactly how it's turned out. My fight has been here, and it's been a training ground for me. One that has taught me that standing for something is crucial, and it's missing in America today. Our politicians are like chameleons. I'd rather stand beside an ultra-liberal Democrat who was consistent and unapologetic and stood for it than a conservative who picks and chooses based on how the wind is blowing. I won't have much in common with this person in terms of my values, but by golly, at least we'll have some. And it'd be my suggestion to you that someone told me this, that you cannot get elected to higher office in America today without prostituting yourself. I am not willing to do that. I'm going to earn it standing up, or I'll go home and go fishing and do lots of other fun things. Boy, that sounds good. I'll tell you what, I've got a fishing trip planned. My wife said to me the other day, we've got a little place down, a little cracker house built in the 20s down in Florida, and my wife said, come November 5th, I'm going to Florida fishing. She's a fishing fool. I'll be laying in the boat gasping for breath, and she'll be trying to catch fish. She loves fishing. She said, I'm going to Florida on November 5th, the day after the election. It is your option to go with me or not, but I am going, so I guess I'll go. I have 3 filters, by the way. My personal filter is the Bible. I'm a Christian, I'm a Baptist, I'm every liberal's worst nightmare, a conservative Christian, Baptist, Republican. But I'm not smart enough to tell everybody what they ought to do, and I don't do that, and I don't thump people on the Bible as a politician, or on the head with the Bible as a politician. It's just my personal filter. And then the Constitution. In that coat pocket, wherever it is, I bought a bunch of Constitutions when I got elected to City Council. I've carried one in there ever since then, and I look at it. And that document is in serious jeopardy in America at the local, state, and national level because we're ignoring it. We're not treating it seriously. The federal government especially violates it all the time, in my view. And then the third thing are those principles I mentioned earlier, those core Republican principles that are just basically about protecting America, keeping people big and government small, and looking out for our money in our bags. That's really what they're about. And I'm almost done. I believe in two things. I believe in what the Founding Fathers created. And if you spend any time overseas, and I've spent a lot, I have a son, 24, that for about 10 years of his life, every year I took him to one or two places in the world. The last place we went to was Cuba. That was in 1999. I wanted him to see a communist country. In 2001, actually it was 2000 I took him to Cuba. In 2001, in October, we were set to go to Vietnam. He would have been 18, the same age I was when I was in Vietnam. We were going to go to the same places. What happened before October in 2001? And it took the heart out of me. I just I couldn't bring myself to do it. I forfeited a lot of money, but I couldn't focus on an old war when it appeared that we were in a new one. But what I found is that there is not a better system. I didn't find a better one in Europe. I didn't find a better one in south of our border. Cuba certainly didn't offer one, just exactly the opposite. I haven't found one anywhere. But we have to fight for it, we have to work for it, we have to appreciate it and not take it for granted. And we do that best by what I call the American success equation. Now that's not, it's my own recipe for it, but it's something that has supported our foundation in America since we began. And it's three words: liberty, opportunity, and responsibility. And if anybody comes to you and says you only have to do two of those or one of those, watch out for them. Because you have to do all three. It's like baking a cake without sugar or without flour. You have to have all the ingredients in that equation. Liberty, freedom. Opportunity, open doors. And responsibility, accountability. And if you don't have all those three things, you don't have America. And I'm afraid that we're letting those slide through our fingers. And my job is to care about something beside me. Something beside me. Because I promise you, if this was about me, I would not be running for Congress. I would not be running to be a representative. I'm at a point in my life where I can fish with my wife. I've been practicing psychology so long, I don't have to find new patients. I've got all the patients I need. I'm blessed in a million ways. I've got two wonderful grandchildren that I'd rather spend time with than anything I can think of. But it's not just about me. I'm here to fight for you, and I'm here to fight for America, and I'm here to fight for the people that aren't here, that represent that future. So it's my pleasure to be with you today. I've enjoyed every moment of this so far. Thank you. Now I'm ready for some tough questions. May I come out and sit on the stool? We call this our stool campaign. Can you throw a real light one at me, kind of warm me up a little bit?
All right. You said you spent some time around soup kitchens and for a lot of citizens in poverty.
Yes.
There's a lack of dignity there. What would be one of your strategies to give those people dignity?
The head of the Housing Authority in Asheville is named Gene Bell. He's a good friend, black man. I consider him, we don't get to spend much time together, but I consider him a dear friend. One of the reasons I consider him a dear friend is I respect him. He's had the courage to hold up his hand and say, hey, we can not uplift the people in public housing if we don't put some accountability in the equation of their lives. To live here, you should have to work at some level if you can. That's the head of the Housing Authority. And if he tells me that, I believe him. Now, my own experiences bear that out and prove it. I believe in programs that help people stand up, not sit down. An example would be the GI Bill. The GI Bill got me through college, or a good part of it. Thank goodness. I would not have gone to college if it hadn't been for the GI Bill out of Vietnam. It got me on my feet, but I had to make the grades. I had to cut it to get the help. The problem with the equation now is you can get the goodies, and you don't even have to be a legal citizen. You can get the goodies without holding the responsibility. So I would plug that word responsibility and accountability more strongly into the equation. And I'll just tell you, I have more faith in the faith-based community to uplift people. I have more faith in the ability of people like you all who care. Obviously, you wouldn't be in here unless you're either trying to get a grade or you care. There's not much other reason to be here. Don't tell me if you're trying to get a grade. I believe in people helping people. The way you uplift anybody is not by bureaucratic programs. It's by putting one person with one person.
How do you plan to support students that are in public education?
How what now?
How do you plan to support students that are in public education?
In public education. I'm a believer in public education. Unfortunately, I think the educational system in America has been kidnapped by teachers' unions, the federal government, state government, attorneys, bureaucrats, and taken away from the folks who are closest to the reality. Teachers back at an earlier time, in my time, frankly, for the most part, teachers, principals, communities, and parents made the decisions about our educational system. Today, it's not that way. I'll tell you an analogy for it, and I ran into it a few times in Vietnam, that one of the jobs that I had part of the time was sitting in these little spotter planes as an observer. I was no big deal. I was just a little noodle head, and didn't know what I was doing, but I would do that, and occasionally we'd have an experience where there would be a firefight down on the ground, and you'd have some dude in a helicopter flying around telling some poor little second or first lieutenant what to do down there. Some guy up here, relatively safe in a helicopter, telling the guy getting shot at how you should handle it. The further you are from the real reality, the more poorly, I believe, you affect that reality. I think we should get education back to the local level, take it back. I believe in competition in education just like I do in everything else. Competition in balance creates a better reality. If you talk to people who homeschool their children, I think it's a travesty. I mean, can you imagine homeschooling a child? Automatically it means you've got to give up one source of income. And then you stay home and you have to learn to be a teacher. And you have to put all that time into your child, and it's just a major responsibility. People do that because they're terrified of our public education system. I would absolutely support a partial tax credit for people who want to try alternative education. You don't have to give them 100%. You don't have to give them the same amount we invest in public education. You know how much we spend on public education for every student in Nashville, North Carolina? $15,000 a year. Madison County is probably half that. Less?
We were around
4. Well, I know Buncombe County is $8,000, but Asheville City Schools is $15,000. I'm sorry, we could free up some money for other people to try other things, because I think competition produces quality. But getting back to education back to the local level, letting communities, teachers, parents, principals make their own determination of education. That's what I would push for, will push for, already do it, and within the limits of my ability on Asheville City Council. Yes, sir, in the red shirt.
Yeah. You mentioned near the beginning of your speech that you're pro-life, and I respect that very much, but I think one of the problems is all of us here Republicans talk about being pro-life a lot.
Right.
But, and George Bush ran in both elections, based that he was pro-life, and he ran on that fact, but the reality is that there's been more abortions during his 8 years than there were Bill Clinton's. So I guess my question is, you are pro-life, and I do respect that, but what can be done, short of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade?
Right. that's, of course, the key. All I can say is that I will, if any legislation comes before us, and I have the option of voting pro-choice or pro-life, I will vote pro-life. But let me say something there. I don't think the federal government should be involved in this issue. I think it's been kidnapped by the judicial system. I think it's been kidnapped by the federal government. I think this should be a states' rights issue. States should fight this out. States should deal with it. You know, one of the things I get a lot is Republicans want big government when they want big government, and small government when they want small government. Well, folks, that's like saying you want to take a bath but stay dry. Pick one. Don't come to me and say you believe in small government and then say you want me to pass all these rules about this social behavior or that social behavior. You're going to find me in Congress pushing things back to the states, or trying to, speaking to that as actively as I can. Get it back. Again, the further away the guidance is from the reality, I'll just tell you, I have a hard time with government dictating what ladies do with their body. I really have a discomfort with that concept. I mean, I can't have a child. I can't get pregnant. I'm really uncomfortable making those decisions, but that's how it works. And to the extent that I believe in protecting life, and that responsibility falls on my shoulder, I will err in that direction every opportunity that comes along. Keep that one going.
Yeah, would you support legislation that made adoption programs easier? And also, would you consider legislation that could change our sex education curriculum?
From the federal government, no. No. Again, am I big government or not? I don't think that the federal government should tell North Carolina or Madison County what they should be doing with sex education. I think that's part of the reason we've lost accountability in our system, is that the rules are all coming from way up high. They're not coming from where the real world is. So no, I would not support federal legislation that does that, because I've got an overriding principle. This is really, I'm sincere about this. You get big people or you get big government, pick one. And I much more believe in big people, and I want the decisions made as close to the reality as we can. I'm tired of unfunded federal mandates. I'm tired of a federal government that sidesteps its constitutional responsibilities. I'm tired of a federal government that pretends it can be all things to all people and can't get anything done. I want y'all to go easy on me. I'm on Asheville City Council. I'm not used to having people clap like this. Just break me in gentle here.
Well, get rid of No Child Left Behind or send us some money to support it.
There you go. Another unfunded mandate. That's the worst of all worlds. We're going to tell you what to do. We're not going to pay for it. Yes, sir.
What do you think are the two most pressing problems facing the United States in the next 5 years?
The economy, and something related to the economy, our energy policy. There are other things that come close. I'm very concerned about our foreign entanglements and foreign policy. Maybe there'll be some questions about that. The economy, to me, is real scary. Now, I'm not an economist. I'm a psychologist. I'll tell you how much. I failed high school algebra. I'll tell you how much I know. But by the way, I went to school with another wild child, Franklin Graham. You ever heard of him? Went to summer school with Franklin Graham. He and I used to, I'd steal gin from my father, and he'd steal gin from a neighbor, and we'd have a gin and 7-Up cocktail. This is honest truth. Every day, if you run into Franklin Graham, tell him about this. In the 9th grade, in summer school, we'd have a gin and 7-Up cocktail together. Tell you where my life was headed. I'm not strong on math, but I study finance a lot because I want to know what I'm doing. It's a big part of government. Our inflationary monetary policy, our waste in government, our hollow promises, our fly now, pay later approach are taking the heart out of this economy. When I first got elected to Asheville City Council, I cashed in my retirement plan, didn't want to have any biases at all, none at all. And I bought gold and silver stocks. Best thing I ever did in my life. I didn't have a whole lot of money in there, but you could buy that's gone down here recently some, but let's say up until about 3 months ago, When I first got in Nashville City Council, a silver dollar was worth about this thing right here was worth about $6, $6.50. Up until a few months ago, it got up as high as $20. What happens when the value of one of these or a gold coin goes up? What's happening to the dollar? It's going down. The economy really scares me, and we're letting our manufacturing base erode. And you keep hearing services, 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 and folks, that'll only take you so far. You got to make it. You got to mine it, build it, grow it, things like that. And I worry for our future. And then in our energy policy, I'm like you all. I share real concerns about our energy policy, and there are many reasons. But one of the big ones is we're a transportation-based economy. You know, one of my best friends lives in Madison County, but works at the VA hospital, and he drives an hour to work every day. He can't get a bus on a bus or a train and do that. We're not going to have the density in Western North Carolina to support a mass or help to pay for a mass transit system for 100, 200, maybe forever years. Our topography won't allow it. You know, in Asheville, I'm a big believer in mass transit as a social service. Give a person a job or a way to get around, and you do as much to uplift them as anything you can. But do you know how much we have to subsidize the mass transit system in Asheville? For every dollar of fare, how many local, state, or national tax dollars do you think go in the pot? Five. That'll vary sometimes, it'll be a little more, a little less, but in the neighborhood of $5, we have to subsidize every dollar we make on that transit system. There's not enough density. People like their cars, too. That's part of America, you know, getting around and doing things. It's one of the things that's made us what we are. But the price of gas and being dependent on foreign countries scares me to death. Anybody going to ask me about energy policy, where I stand on that?
What is your view on the drilling in America? Because that we have so much oil.
You're going to ask me about energy policy. I'm glad you brought that up. I would drill in my backyard if I could. We should drill every place that we can make it work financially. We should drill immediately our best reserves. Anwar, offshore, I don't care what it is. Go after it. Why? Everybody says, well, gosh, it won't get online for 5 years, 10 years. It doesn't matter. We need to start breaking our dependency immediately. And they say, well, just go into the international market. That's all right. When the Saudi Arabians cut us off, we'll have our own access. Do it immediately. Now people say, what about the environment? Folks, we know how to protect our transportation-based economy and not corrupt the environment. Everybody that wants to pollute America, please raise your hand. Everybody who is indifferent to our environment, please raise your hand. Nobody's going to do that. We all care about this place we live in. We may not know how to do it. We're having a conversation over dinner, and thank you again for that, by the way, those of you that were there. This Western North Carolina is far cleaner now than it was when I was growing up. The air is cleaner. The water is infinitely cleaner. I was joking about when you fished in the French Broad back when I was growing up, you caught toilet paper as often as you caught fish. And you didn't eat the fish you caught. I never would have thought trout would have liked toilet paper, but they got pretty big in the French Broad. Toilet paper.
Isn't that due to regulation?
No, sir. It's due partially to regulation. It's also due to the conscience of good people. It's due to education. It's due to maturity. It's due to financial and economic realities. There are a lot of parts to that equation. That question came up too. I'll come back here in just a second, but the issue of regulation. Here's where I stand on regulation. First off, the closer the regulators are to the reality, the better. Regulating from afar doesn't work real well. Secondly, if you pass regulations, enforce them consistently and fairly. Don't just pass a bunch of rules and enforce them on a spotty basis. That's not fair. If you're going to pass them, uphold them. And what that does, it makes regulations real and effective, and it forces accountability on those who are regulated, but also on the part of the people that are doing the regulation. What we've got in America today is a bunch of rules with nobody trying to enforce them. And that's a terrible mistake. So back on energy policy, drill everywhere you can and drill our best reserves. Don't send people out in the wilderness. I've got a lady I know right now. Wait a minute, she's in the back of the room back there. She says, I've got some property out west that they're drilling oil on that, but I don't get any money out of that. And I said, why not? She said, well, they can't afford to ship it. There's a lot down there, and they can pump it out, but they can't afford to ship it somewhere to process it. And that's one of the fallacies, about, well, they've got all these drilling permits, let them drill these things. Well, it's not accessible, or the quality is not good enough, or the quantity is not good enough. Drill the best we've got. Alternative energies, I'm all for them. I'm not for some of the goofy ones like corn-based ethanol. I think it's not fair to take food out of people's mouths to drive our cars. Brazil and other places do it better and smarter. If we can learn from them, all right, fine. Ethanol's fine. It can be another source other than the food source. But I like alternative energy. I had solar collectors in the mid-'70s. No, that wasn't popular. But I had some. I believe in those energies. But the equation needs to make sense. Have you ever heard of the Road to Nowhere or the North Shore Road over in Clay County? I went over there and visited with them a while back. In the middle of the wilderness out there, or what people think was the wilderness, they had 7,000 people, and they had hydropower there before the county seat had power. The first transit system, mass transit system, the trolleys in Asheville were run off of a hydro plant on the French Broad River. Get back to hydro. If there's a place that wind will work. There's two places in North Carolina where I think there's a lot of wind. One occurs naturally at Appalachian State. The other occurs at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill for other reasons. Do you know how to save a drowning Carolina student? Say no. What'd you say?
No.
Good. I like alternative energies. They make sense. But folks, we've got one of the largest coal supplies in the world. We're going to have to find ways to make it work for us. I don't know if you know this. We have one of the cleanest coal burning plants in America right here in western North Carolina. Out in Arden, that plant. What's coming out of there for the most part is steam. It's steam. When I was growing up, man, it was black smoke coming out of there. You could see for 20 miles. We're making headway. You know what I believe is actually going to save our bacon down the road? That's a big red ball above our heads. That's the one I believe that has the greatest potential to save us energy-wise. I have faith that we're going to get that. We're going to figure out how to tap into the sun. We're already close. Instead of having to wait for a million years until it makes oil or gas or coal, we're going to tap into it directly. I believe that's our energy future. One more point, by the way, on drilling. Something you don't hear a lot about. I was talking to a guy in my office the other day about natural gas. He works for a natural gas company. He just installs the lines. He's not a big wig or anything like that. But he reminded me. He said, when you drill for oil, one of the byproducts is natural gas. We're getting, I think, 50% of our supply from overseas. This winter, we're going to have a lot of cold people in America because they can't afford their natural gas bill, because they can't afford their oil bill. So that's another byproduct we can get out of drilling is natural gas that will make a significant difference. By the way, talking about big government, do you know what spiked the price of natural gas in America? The EPA setting up standards for the coal-fired power plants. And what did the coal-fired power plants do? They switched to natural gas because it was cleaner, and the price of natural gas for the average residents doubled or tripled or whatever it did. So I'm an all-of-the-above kind of guy. If you're spending time in France, go to Paris in the dead of winter, and you'll find the shop doors open. Why? Because energy is cheap there. Why is it cheap? What do they have in France that we don't do? We haven't built one of here in 30 years. Nuclear. Scares us to death. Think nuclear, we think bomb. I'm sorry, we know how to do that right. I like the French model. I like the odds of us managing nuclear energy better than I do your grandmother sitting in a house with a thermostat at 50 degrees because she can't afford to pay her bill. And that's what's going to happen. That's the reality of a failed energy policy, and we haven't had one in my adult life. Okay, other questions? Anybody?
I have to say that I can't agree with the United States people, the taxpayer, paying for 55% of all R&D compared to the oil companies only paying 45%.
I agree with you.
And plus, they are raking in profit hand over fist.
Get no argument for me. I don't have any trouble with them making profit, but if they're getting a rigged deal, like we're doing the research for them, or they're getting tax breaks that aren't particularly fair, I have a hard time with that. I do not believe in corporate welfare, international welfare, or community welfare. I'm the only member of Asheville City Council who consistently votes against corporate welfare, which is where groups, just one second, where groups come into town, employers, and say, we're going to bring you a great company, now give us a break. We're delighted to bring them in, but why should we give a break to these folks and not to these folks? That's corporate welfare. I think it's wrong, and whether you apply it to a company coming into Asheville or an oil company trying to get a special deal, I don't support it.
The second issue on that was, I was online in the smartvote.com or .org, and I seen your political courage test where you would support eliminating corporate tax, period. So by doing that, you're saying you would fall in lines with the Republican Party, saying that anybody who earned over $500,000 a year would receive a special tax credit.
I'm glad you brought that up. I said I would eliminate, and I would, corporate taxes, company taxes, not individual taxes. Let me tell you why. We have an unlevel playing field in the world today, and the tax structure of America is undermining our ability to maintain manufacturing, to maintain those corporations. What do corporations do with the profit they make? They do one of two things. They either reinvest it, which creates new jobs and new opportunities, or they pay people. There's where the taxes come into play. And by the way, if I could take this liberty, one of the things that we need to do to fix our economy is fix our tax code. And of all the proposals that are on the table, I believe the fair tax makes the most sense. It's a consumption tax. It makes us all equal. It takes all the complexities out of it. It makes us quit dreading April 15th. I like it better than any of the options that currently exist. But I would do away with every corporate tax. Get the tax. If we're going to have taxes, and I'm a bit of a libertarian. I wish we could get the federal government out of our pockets in as many ways as possible. But if we're going to be realistic and we have to reform it, we do it, I'd go for the fair tax. But I want our manufacturers to be able to keep jobs here and compete in this world. We don't have to give them a special deal. Let's set it up to where they reinvest that money or pay people and then tax those people.
But let me add to that. You eliminate the corporate tax, and it's a proven fact that 2% of the wealthiest Americans pay 90% of all the tax. So if you eliminate that 90%, who does that 90% fall on? It falls on us.
Well, no, those 90% that you're talking about, they're paid by the corporation.
No. The tax that we pay to support the government is 90% supported by corporate tax. That 90% would fall on us.
No, that's not true.
Then who's going to support the government?
Well, but it's not
We're not
true.
going to have one.
It's not true that corporate taxes pay 90% of our taxes. That's actually the opposite is true.
I said the top 2% of the wealthiest Americans,
Who are wage earners. Their wages, their capital gains are taxed. Those people you're talking about are that's exactly what I'm saying. Unless we believe in a socialistic model, we don't control that. We let the market control it. And I believe it will stay out of it. It will. We've set up a system now. We've rigged it. We've got this hybrid system between socialized government and free enterprise government. And it's so rigged up and complicated that it's actually messing things up. Let me give you an example. The collapse of the housing market, One of the big causes of that was in 2002, George Bush, a Republican, our president, passed or created an initiative with the support of Congress to require banks to give loans to lesser qualified applicants. Required it. And what was the outcome of that? You combine that with the inflationary monetary policy, which some people, you know, they won't, the Fed will not tell you how much new money they print every year, but overseas folks who are investing here do research on it, and the estimates are 18%. I don't know this for a fact, but that they print 18% more money each year. And you combine that inflationary monetary policy by the Fed, and then that micromanaged regulation by President Bush and Congress, and you created a nightmare. And now we have a housing bubble. And then what did they turn around and do? Empowered the Treasury and the Fed to take over Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and mortgage your future. I hope you send them a thank you note. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. I did not believe in that rigged deal.
But the corporations, let's go back to that. Let's just pick ExxonMobil for instance. $9 billion last quarter profit. Now, corporations incorporate for reasons, and they also pay a higher tax rate because incorporating for a reason. So what are you saying? You are telling us that 38% on the average of corporate tax goes away, and we're going to benefit from it because somebody has to pick that up. Who's picking that up?
I can tell you unequivocally that we'll benefit from it because it creates a more level playing field where American companies can compete in a dangerous world. America no longer owns the major oil companies we once did. These mega companies you hear everybody talking about, they're not American companies anymore. We have taxed and regulated ourselves out of a future. And so I'm concerned not just with how much revenue we produce, but how much future we produce, how many jobs we produce. Now, if we're rigging the deal to help them make those profits, that's wrong. But creating a level playing field, I'm 100% behind it. Yes, sir.
How do you convince people to not vote for the candidate that promises them the most? And if you can't carry that argument, how is democracy going to survive?
Well, the founding fathers didn't think it would. Obviously, the system they created was designed to keep pushing us back to that, but they had great fears that it wouldn't survive. It may not. I think all a person like me who's running for Congress can do is to try to build the skill sets that are necessary to function in that political arena, and then be honest and candid and open with people and leave it in their hands. Now, I can tell you what I find. I believe there's still more people in America that care about we than me. Now, whether that will translate into victory, I don't know. But I'm going to differentiate, and I'm going to give them, we're running the most unique campaign in America. The most unique campaign in America. We're doing things that nobody else is doing. I don't have any paid staff. None. Had one, my opponent outspent me 5-1, or my largest opponent in the last election. Good guy. I like both of my opponents, but one of them outspent me 5-1, and we had one staff member, he had 6 or 7 or 8. We pulled it off that time. I don't know whether we can pull it off this time, but we're running the most unique campaign in America. Whether it'll get traction with the voters, I'm not in control of that. I try to concentrate. Somebody said the other day, how many polls have you done? I said, none. How many polls are you going to do? None. What good is a poll to me? If I'm way ahead, does that mean I back off? If I'm way behind, I'm doing as much as I can do right now. I can't work any harder. All I can do is work hard with the help of our volunteers and leave it in the hands of the voters and higher authority. So, can't control that. We may find America continuing its drift towards socialism.
You mentioned Governor Palin. Can you make a guess as to how she's going to do? dates and the interviews and so forth?
Well, based on her behavior so far, I think she's a sincere, gutsy lady. She is value-driven. She's not perfect, but I can tell you as a local elected official, she's dodged a lot of traps that are set up for officials. I think she's got the savvy to be an extraordinary lady. I take her head over heels over any other female in national politics that I know now. I'm impressed with her. I'm great. I can tell you something else too. I'm grateful for her. Let's see. You got this lady, that gentleman, and we'll come back to you. Yes, ma'am.
Well, we keep hearing that John McCain's a maverick now. Howard's a maverick and you're a maverick. How are mavericks going to turn the herd?
The same way, that's the only way change has ever occurred anywhere. Our founding fathers were mavericks. Margaret Mead, anthropologist, was asked one time, how do you create change? And she said, the only way change has ever occurred is with small groups of people. And I think the mavericks are simply saying, what we're doing is wrong, and it's not working. And it's really interesting that I'm called a maverick because all I want our party to do is uphold its principles. It really fascinates me. And have you heard about the guy who mentioned that as a citizen he would support the impeachment of President Bush? Is he here? Is he here? Well, that guy's me. And I can't tell you how many people that's angry. What I said in a press release was that I would support, as a citizen, the impeachment of President Bush. Why did I say that? It was over a specific instance. The president had promised to put 6,000 National Guard troops on the border. He only put 3,000. And then he pulled those 3,000. And I'm sorry, if you're the chief executive officer, if you're a member of Congress, you have an oath of office to protect the Constitution, which includes protecting the sanctity of this country. And if you're not protecting our borders, you're not looking out for America. And I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, the Pope, I'm going to hold up my hand and say it's wrong. Now, I wasn't interested in impeaching anybody. I do believe in that word accountability. And if I go to Washington, I promise you, I'm going to be holding up my hand. You know the story of the emperor in his new clothes? Do you remember the little boy that told his mom, Mom, the king is wearing his underwear? You know that story? Well, I won't be that guy. And I don't care who it is. I'm actually going to be harder on my party than the other party because I believe that's my responsibility as a Republican. I see the Republican Party as the future and hope of America, the principle-driven Republican Party. And so I'm going to fight to get us back to those. And I'll make anybody mad to do it. I won't back off from that. Now let's see. Did I answer your question? Yes, sir.
I'm adopted and my mom did a lot of work for me to become a U.S. citizen.
Congratulations.
So what's your stance and what should be done and what shouldn't be done for illegal immigrants? Because I think that's not fair for them to come over here and take over basically our country and for somebody like me to come over here, do all the paperwork, pay, and become a citizen without doing what they should be doing.
Yeah, you did. Can't tell you how much I admire your mom because she did all the work. Can't tell you how much I admire you for holding up your hand and saying that. I met with a gentleman yesterday from Cuba who said exactly the same thing. I talked to a person on the phone yesterday whose wife is from Mexico who said exactly the same thing. I talked to a guy this morning whose wife has been sent back to Asia somewhere who said exactly the same thing. Here's where I stand on it. I believe the illegal immigration is the greatest law-breaking scheme in America's history. And my party as much as the other party. My party has been looking for cheap labor. The other party is looking for cheap votes. And both of them are overlooking the reality and the harms. There's nonsense left, right, and yonder on this subject. Let me start with a few. I have a hard time with companies that have either a bad business model or an inferior product or poor management and want to live in America and enjoy the benefits of America but pay Mexican wages. And what those companies do, and you have one in close proximity to this campus, is they want to import their labor from Mexico and have the benefits of here. That's not the way it works. All this nonsense about nobody will take these jobs, well, nobody will take them for subsistence wages. I think it's wrong. I don't believe in fixing wages. I don't think it works. But I think it's wrong that people can't make a living working in McDonald's. I think it's wrong that people can't make a living in working in a lot of plants. Now, I don't believe in telling those people, those companies, what they should pay. But I don't believe they should be able to sidestep the law and the accountabilities of a free market system. That's wrong. I can tell you about a company, I won't mention the name, but if you start with that plant, they pay you $7 an hour to start. Can you live on $7 an hour in America? You can't do it. How come they're able to hire people? Because the majority of their workers are illegal immigrants that they exploit. And we keep that company in the community, and guess who pays for the health care of those illegal immigrants? Guess who pays for their schooling? Guess who pays for their social services? And so many other things. We do. And that company rips us off. I hold the Mexican government, because most of the illegal immigrants in America today come from Mexico, I hold the Mexican government most accountable for the flood. I hold the American government second most accountable because we're not. That includes the president, who's responsible for the executive branch. And by the way, not just this president. Every president before him, including Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter, began this process way back then, have ignored their executive authority. I blame the American government, but the group I really like to grab hold of are the employers. The people who provide the jobs and the money that fuel the flood. And everybody says, well, how are you going to fix this? Well, it's not. We don't have to bus people back to South America and Mexico and fly them back. What we need to do is start finding the employers. It took some hard work, but was able to get ICE to act on Mills Manufacturing. You may have heard about that. They arrested 58 people there. In a plant down the street, 60 people ran out of the plant because they thought they were going to do it there too. They fired those 60 people, and to the credit of both companies, they said they're going to use the E-Verify program going forward and only hire legal workers. I admire both of them for doing it. That was a major victory. That's how we're going to fix illegal immigration. It's not going to occur by the federal government. It's going to occur by fighting back at the local level, and we have the ability to do it. And you're going to see me do some more things, whether I get elected or not. One of the wonderful things about Asheville City Council, it gives me plenty of opportunity to create mischief in a lot of areas, and I'm going to continue doing it in either arena. Yes, sir.
So we should have blocked the borders? Is that what you're saying?
We shouldn't.
Is that what you're saying?
No. The best fence is consequence. The problem with, there are places that a border will really work, and there are a lot of places that it won't. As a matter of fact, the design for the border fence can be defeated with tools out of your average garage in about 20 minutes. They tried it. There's some places it'll work, some places it won't. It's not a fence. They tried that in Vietnam, by the way. Anybody who's over there, they built what they call it, McNamara wall. They built this wall and said, well, we're going to build a wall. They can't get through. How well did that work in Vietnam? Well, it won't work down there either. What we have to do is create consequence for the people that violate the law, whether it comes crossing our borders and using fake ID. Fake ID is the felony, by the way. It's a misdemeanor to cross our borders. It's a felony to use fake ID. But the real place of violation is with employers, and that's where you can create some accountability and reverse the flood. Now, in fairness to others, I've got to move on here real quick. Go ahead.
All right, well, so what are you going to do with the illegal ones that are here? Are you going to...
Well, if they can't get a job, what are they going to do?
So you're not going to punish them for being here?
Wait just a second. We're having an exchange of questions here. If they can't get a job, what are they going to do? If we're holding employers accountable and enforcing the law, try not paying your payroll taxes in America, and what will happen?
Will crime increase?
They'll be on you like a bird on June bug. We can do the same thing with illegal the law in terms of employing illegal immigrants. We don't have to bus people back. Of course we should enforce our borders, but we have to be realistic about how much we can do that. Our borders pass right through cities. What are we going to do? Put a Berlin Wall up? I don't think so. I don't think we're going to want to do that. That's not the American way. I don't think we have to. There are places a fence will work, but the best fence is consequence and largely for the employers.
Will crime increase if they're not working?
A significant number of the people, if you're a criminal in Mexico and you want to avoid accountability, one of the best ways to do it is cross our borders now. What percentage of the people in federal prisons are illegal aliens? Anybody know?
Is it 20?
30%? 30%? Yeah. We've already got the crime problem. Will it cause some additional crime? Sure, but what are we going to do? We're going to be paralyzed because of that? I mean, we have to act somewhere, and going after the employers is the answer. Now, let's see, I want to take everybody in fair order. This gentleman, and then come back to you.
Yeah, I have two areas that I want to hit on. First of all, I applaud your mother and you. My wife is from Germany, and I paid for my wife's immigration, and it isn't cheap. And I was very angry at Ted Kennedy's proposal of this $5,000 flat fee. However, let me steer you back to your PCT, where you didn't vote in favor of lowering the numbers of illegal immigrants.
Tell everybody
And let me
what
finish.
Tell everybody what PCT is.
Political courage test. He did not vote in favor of lowering the numbers of immigration. I applaud you on what you just spoke. I am for it 100%. And I can tell everybody that the wall is estimated at $56 million present to build and finish. The other thing that I wanted to hit on was the other gentleman's question.
Can you stay with that earlier point before we move on about I did not vote to lower the number?
Yes, you said in your PCT test where it said, would you vote to lower the number of illegal immigrants in the United States? You left it blank. When everything else that you were for, you X'd.
I can't imagine, was it legal or illegal? I can't imagine why. Well, I can't imagine why I'd leave that blank.
It's blank. It's on smartvoter.org. Also, on the gentleman over here's question with Sarah Palin, which I just wanted to get your opinion on really quickly, because before I left the house, I'm on the News Alert network for ABC News, and you know that ABC News has been the choice to interview Sarah Palin, and her initial quote is, if Russia invades another country, war may be necessary. Would you like to comment on that?
I'd be delighted. Let's go back to that earlier one. You've read that, they call it a courage test for a reason, because most politicians don't answer those questions. It takes a lot of time. They're detailed questions. I thought it was a great questionnaire, and I got to it real quickly. You didn't notice many blanks, if any blanks. If there's a blank in there, I can just tell you it's by accident. There shouldn't be a blank in there. If you don't mind, if you've gone to the trouble of reading that, and I'm grateful, if you could tell me, send me an email, tell me what that is, I'll go back in there and say it. I can tell you this. I have a concern. Wherever you have excess population, you have poverty, you have pollution, and a lot of other harmful things. Historically, America has allowed about 250,000 legal immigrants a year. In America today, we allow 1 million, plus we're getting another 1 million or so illegally. That's 2 million people a year. I don't believe America can absorb that many people successfully. It's a strong concern. Sarah Palin and Sarah has been conned or corrupted, if she said that, because I can tell you, I've been in a half-hearted war, and I do not believe in harmful foreign entanglements that put young men and women at risk. I think that this Saturday when they were talking about, they were rattling sabers about Georgia, you do anything more to Georgia, you're risking a war with us. That is absolutely absurd. When you look at what a crazy, dangerous world we have here, we can't run America, and we're proposing to go over and run foreign policy between Georgia and Russia. That is absolutely insane. I would not speak to that. I would suggest to you, Sarah's been conned a bit.
I quote ABC News Alert.
Okay, we believe you, but I can tell you I do not feel that way. And I'll tell you one of the biggest reasons. One, we're no good at it. We're no good at foreign policy. Look at what a mess this world is in. We can't even patrol our own borders, our porous borders. We can't get rid of our drug problem in America. And we're pretending we're foreign policy geniuses? That's a bunch of nonsense. The other reason is I do not believe in undeclared half-hearted wars. It happened in Korea, where they set limits that got thousands of young men killed. It happened in Vietnam, where we lost 57,000 Americans, and an untold number of wounded, and an untold number came back so messed up they never had a life and killed themselves with alcohol and drugs and everything else in the world. And we set up this crazy situation where some places you could fight and some places you couldn't. You couldn't tell the good guys from the bad guys. And then we send our troops to Iraq and allow Iran to import improvised explosive devices. They weren't improvised, they were well-designed explosive devices that defeat the armor of a majority of our vehicles, and have all of these young men and young women come back with brain injury. I can tell you this, if I had control, every time a bomb went off beside a road that had an Iranian stamp on it, we'd be putting a Predator missile up some general's tailpipe. Put a Predator missile up his tailpipe and get his attention. Take an air base off the map, but don't get ground troops involved in these foreign entanglements that we don't have the will to fight out long enough to win. You can't win anyway. So, Sarah and I would disagree.
That's all I wanted to hear.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, that does bring us to Iraq.
This is fun. Thank you all so much. Great.
But I guess I definitely disagree with our decision, what we did going into Iraq. I think it was a huge mistake, and I think we do have to get out of it. I think one of the biggest things that one of my best friend growing up, almost a brother.
Thank you for being here tonight, you and your husband.
Thank you
Very much.
It was
Grateful.
very good to hear you.
Thank you.
Anyhow, like my best friend growing up, he's in Baghdad right now.
Right.
He was home a couple months ago, and one of my big questions that I asked it to anyone who's in support of the Iraq War is, why are we there? And it really bothers me because he's there, like risking his life, and he didn't have an answer. And I feel like that's a big problem, and it's a sign that that it's not that justified. If a soldier is risking his life every day in Baghdad, he doesn't have an answer to why he's there. I mean, that seems obvious that there's a problem, like something's missing.
Right. I personally believe, in response to your inquiry, I personally believe that we went to Iraq arrogantly. However, 5 years later, to exit just as arrogantly, to me, compounds the error. I believe that we need to honor the men and women who have served there, to do our best to try to produce a victory out of this somewhat insane reality. I don't know that we can. We've had tremendous success. The president deserves tremendous credit. His surge worked. It's had a major impact. Those people have the potential of a future. Now, whether they'll embrace it and turn it to life, we do not know. But I feel two things. We should fight it out to victory with the amount of sacrifice and investment we've made so far. Fight it out to victory. I saw what happened in Vietnam. It broke my heart when we betrayed those people. We made them promises, we set them up, and then we walked away, and when the North Vietnamese invaded, and let it happen. And I can tell you that creates tremendous horrors and chaos, and I'm not willing to swap potential for assured chaos. We should fight it out, or when it's determined that the Iraqi people, fight it out to victory, or when it's determined that the Iraqi people no longer want us there, get out, because we cannot win if they don't want us there. I think we're pretty close to achieving one of those two realities.
I just want to say that at least she has confidence in herself, whereas Biden says that he might not even be the best pick for the presidential or the vice presidential candidacy. So that's And I wanted to know, one, what do you think of the state of the correction system? And two, do you have any ideas on that? And I don't know if anybody is familiar with Maricopa County's Sheriff Joe Arpaia
Oh, yeah.
and some of the things that he does. And whether you agree with them or not, at least he is taking an imaginative
He's the guy that
approach.
puts pink uniforms on his prisoners.
Right, and he's effective. You know, he cuts costs. He's very conservative.
Feeds them for 3 cents a day or something.
And so, what
It's a
do you
little more
think
than
of those kind of innovative approaches, and what would you push for?
I'm very much against creative conservative Republicans. I think we just need to avoid them whenever possible. I'm just kidding. I love creative conservative Republicans. And that's what he is. He's put pink uniforms on these guys, and they get TVs. He took the TVs out in the federal government, then he put the TVs back in. And you know what he put on? The weather, and I think Fox News. Did I remember that correctly? Yeah. He's great. He makes these guys work. Oh, they live in tents, and they complain because it's so hot. And he says, well, in Baghdad, it's 120 degrees. It's only 100 here. Consider yourself lucky. I love people like that. What was the first part of your question? I'm sorry.
What do you think of the state of our correction system?
Oh, yes. I'm so glad you asked that. North Carolina has gone from having one of the best judicial systems in the country to one of the worst. You know how many times you have to get caught, get convicted for dealing crack cocaine before you go to jail in Asheville, North Carolina? 103. 3 on average. Well, by the time they catch somebody, it takes them 9 months or so to adjudicate it, and they plea bargain about 98% of the cases. By the time they adjudicate somebody, they're a career criminal. By the time you catch them and adjudicate and put them through all that mess, they're a career criminal. They're lost. Timely justice and fair justice in America especially, or at least in North Carolina, is gone. What do? I complain about it all the time. I give our state legislators heck every chance I get. I'll make when the state of North Carolina gives Asheville money for butterfly exhibits, I vote against it and use it as an opportunity to chastise them for not fixing our judicial system. Because until we get it to the point that when you sell crack cocaine, within 60 days of selling it, you're adjudicated. And you're going to have some consequence. Now, it doesn't have to, there's all kinds of consequences. We don't have to throw everybody in America in jail. There's lots of things you can do. I believe in alternative sentencing, but you've got to properly fund these programs to make them work. There's lots of creative things we can do, but you got to make it more timely, and you got to create immediate accountability. Those of you who have children, planning to have children, if your child misbehaves, can you discipline them 3 days later and alter their behavior? No, you've got to match the accountability closer to the misbehavior. We don't do that in America. It is the weakest part of the system, and I can tell you, if you ask me the question, which is going to do us in faster, the drug culture and a dysfunctional court system, or terrorists like Al-Qaeda, I'll tell you in a hurry, this one's going to get us faster. Already is. We lose lots of people in Madison County and Buncombe County and all over North Carolina to drugs and this corrupt system.
Yeah, so I guess I'm saying, and I think that's what you're saying, you're not the traditional tough on crime approach where they want to make sentences longer.
Put everybody in jail. No,
Yeah, and you're looking
creativity.
for, especially with substance abuse problems, which are linked to a high majority of the crimes, looking for other ways to deal with that and get those people the resources they need to where we can kind of try and combat this problem.
It is possible to be a conservative Republican and be creative. It is. The other night I wanted to talk about something because the council was given another handout to another group and I voted against it and we were ridiculed, I asked the mayor if we could talk about it. It was an agenda item. She pulled it off. I said, I'd still like to talk about it. She wouldn't let me. What did I do? Anybody know what I did? I said, fine, Mayor. When we get to the point of citizen comment, I'll walk around the table and go stand out there and talk as a citizen. If I find an obstacle, I'll just tell you this. If I find an obstacle, the first thing that goes through my mind is this a fight that I should fight? And if it is, I'll find a way under, over, around it, or through it. You can be a Republican and be creative. As a matter of fact, if you're a conservative Republican in America, you better be creative. Okay, let me finish by saying this. You've been a wonderful group. I'm sorry I ran over 10 minutes. I didn't mean to do that. It's not fair to you guys, but you've been great. I loved all of the questions. All of them were fair. It's been nice to stay.